And joining us now, great to welcome a man you've definitely heard his work. If you've watched The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, he's the man who helped write the monologues, and that's the name of his book called Monologue, What Makes America Laugh Before Bed. We're joined today by a comedy writer, Jon Macks, from out in L.A. And John, good to have a chance to talk with you. How are you?
It's great to be talking to you, Doug. Really
I grew up watching Johnny, I guess in the 70s, when probably you and I are about the same age, and I always enjoyed the late-night TV, and you really had the dream of writing for late-night TV. That's pretty good gig for 22 years.
Absolutely. I mean, Johnny is who, you and I are the same age. I say we're in our young 30s, and so, we grew up watching Johnny, and according to my official website, Johnny's who made me want to be a comedy writer. I mean, I would stay up, I would watch him, I'd laugh, I'd get it, and I got a chance then to write for Jay, and started with him in 1992, and was with the show for the whole 22 years writing for him.
Yeah, I think Johnny Carson, probably Bob Hope, those are the two comedians that most people probably associate with the topical monologue. Before that, Jack Parr really didn't do the same kind of monologue. Steve Allen really didn't do much for one at all. He had a different style. But really it was Johnny, Bob Hope, and then Jay kind of picked up the mantle, didn't he?
Absolutely. It was Bob Hope on the radio mainly, who really invented that modern topical monologue. And then when Johnny took over in 1962, the world shifted. Again, like with many of these late night hosts, essentially Johnny didn't start out as a huge success. It took a little while, but once he got his rhythm, about 3-4 months into the show, I mean, it was fantastic. And America watched that monologue to see what was going on, what was the take. And when Johnny said something, and he invited you over as a comic, you had it made. When he said something about a president or someone in the news, that really, when he gave his imprimatur, it made a real difference. And Jay really took that and he expanded it in terms of length. His monologues were about twice as long as Johnny's, and we got to cover a lot more topics.
Yeah, Johnny did, I guess, about 5-6 minutes, and Jay did about, could be 10-12 minutes at some nights, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's, and Jay would we 25 to 30 jokes, and just, well, I think one of the advantages we had on that, Doug, was this, that Johnny had limited news sources. I mean, back then, his stories would have to come from either the evening news the night before, or maybe the Today Show or the newspapers. Luckily with Jay as a comedy writer, I could go to 150,000 websites,
right,
and see what was going on.
Johnny would say, this from the newsroom. He was in the Burbank studios where I guess they did the news out of there as well, right, locally. So that was about his only main source then of breaking news. Now you just go online and it comes right to your phone.
Exactly. You go to a website and there's a flashing red light, and you look at your phone every 5 minutes. I think the hard part is there's probably so many news sources now. It's hard to just sit down and type. When I would work, Doug, what I would do is I collect my sources, I write the stories I wanted to do about, then I shut everything down. I'm not one of those guys who could write with the TV on the radio like some writer. I'd write 50 jokes and then come back and say, let's refresh. Let's see what's out there.
Yeah, that kind of comes to, and the title of your book is Monologue, as a monologue writer, and I remember reading about Bob Hope. He had a whole string of writers seemingly on staff with him, that they would submit maybe 200, 300 jokes, and he would edit it down to the 20, 25 he would use. I guess the Tonight Show is a similar type of process, right? You submit a bunch of jokes and you edit it down?
Right. What would happen is every day, we'd get there 8:30 and start writing jokes. We'd bring him into Jay. His office was literally always open. You just walked in and just handed him the jokes, and he would read through them. He would probably, Doug, over the course of the day, since we had 14 to 18 writers, read about 1,000 jokes, and he would narrow that down to about 100. And then around 1:30 in the day, he would narrow that down to the 25 or 30 he was going to put on the monologue that night. He'd go down to rehearsal, he'd go to cue cards, he'd read through them. Then at 4 o'clock we'd tape, and then we'd start all over again. But the process remains the same. A lot going in. Try to do the best ones out there.
And there are different types, and you talk about it in the book, which I thought was interesting. The different types of monologue jokes, different patterns, right, that you would use.
There's jokes. You start with the big stories. You start with the big news story. You go to the political stories. You'd go with a celebrity story, and then we'd go to the what I'll call the one-offs. A Man in Belgium story.
Right.
A Man in Belgium was caught today hugging a tree, and then you would work off of that for those one. A survey says that 93% of Americans can't read. Wait, I'm sorry, that was 94%. It's whatever the joke is, you'd go with that.
What was your? You talked a little bit about it just now. Your process of writing, turn everything off, and kind of be by yourself. How did you go about it? Did it just kind of come to you, or what was your process?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, all the writers had their own. Mine was, listen to the radio on the way into work, sit down, read one or two newspapers, check a couple websites, and then what I do is I would write, and I would arbitrarily pick this number. It's probably because I'm somewhat superstitious, of 9 topics. So let's say we were doing a monologue today. What would my 9 topics be? Well, you got the NBA playoffs, and you have, Hillary, carrying her own bags and, her announcing for president. And you have, vitamins can make you sick, and the movie Paul Bart's out there, and someone jumped the White House fence. And I would write 9 topics down, and then I would try to connect those topics in a joke, or do jokes about each one individually, and then do a twist. And that would I'd probably end up, just from those 9 big ones, probably with 60 or 70 jokes. Then I would go back and start to look at individual stories, just those odd surveys and quirky stories, get to my 100 jokes, get them all in, and start again.
And there's formula jokes, too. The way you set up
Exactly.
a joke, punchline, lists. The rule of 3, I remember Johnny used to say, right?
Yeah, you have Jerry Seinfeld had a great joke. It said, the first one's funny, the second one no one cares about, the third one's the punchline. It's the rule of 3s. But yeah, it's and you do have formula jokes in the sense of, and I would use these as a way when it was a slow day, or maybe I wasn't really cranking out like I wanted to, and you hit with, and it was really a Carson thing. It's so hot today. It's so cold.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you start that, and if you just write 3 or 4 or 5 of those, it was so cold today that Dick Cheney and Barack Obama were cuddling for warmth. You know what I mean? If you just do that and that formula, and you get it going, then it starts to broaden out and open up. And Jay also did a thing where. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Where we would do what we call a joke run. We would take a topic that was big in the news. The economy's bad, gas prices are so high, and we would do a couple, basically it'd be one setup and a series of punchlines. And Jay would do them real quick. We used to call them Rodney runs, named after Rodney Dangerfield,
sure.
Quick, short jokes on one particular topic. And those were a formula joke in one sense. And you're right, and there are formulas within a joke. The rule of 3s, associations, misdirections. You never start out saying, I'm going to write a misdirection joke. It comes to you, and then you say, wait a second, I can go this way, and you flip it.
I was going to say, you mentioned the run of jokes. Bob Hope was kind of a master of when he got on a roll, and sometimes what he said didn't make sense, but the rhythm drew the laugh. And Jay was good at that, too.
Exactly. Yeah, again, it's when you look at what makes a great late-night host, a great monologuist, it's one, it's obviously topicality, and 2, you have to be willing to say, you can't convince people that Dan Quayle is a genius. You know what I mean? You can't convince people something that's not out there. But it's that delivery. You have to have a unique delivery style, which, Letterman has, Jay has, Johnny had, and great comics like, whether it's Billy Crystal or Chris Rock or Marty Short, their delivery. You know how they're going to deliver the joke, as Steve Martin, and that helps sell it as much as the actual wording.
And in the book, you also talk about a lot of the sketches and that kind of thing. I know you contributed to those as well. That's a little bit different type of comedy writing, isn't it, to write a sketch?
Absolutely, because you're coming at it, as opposed to working off of a topic and then giving the twist and the punchline. A sketch is conceptual. It's the what if. It's the how do we twist. So, for example, with Jimmy Fallon, obviously his what ifs are a little bit different. Is what if someone slow jammed the news, and then let's put them in it. For Jay, in our sketches, and they obviously varied for the years, it'd be like, what if I did romance novels, and we wrote our own romance novel. And so he and Kevin Eubanks would stand there, and they would literally go back and forth and write a fake romance novel. And then there's also the tape bits, where you're going out there, again, probably the most famous one we did was jaywalking,
Sure.
where Jay would go out and, ask people questions that we in the audience all said, how could they not know that? I'll never forget that we used to do them on college campuses at graduation time.
Right.
And eventually the colleges realized it doesn't make us look good if he's asking our history majors when the Civil War was, and they're saying it was 2 weeks ago. It's not making us look good. So we pretty much got stopped from doing colleges. That was, they said, this is not good for our image.
I think the Waters guy in Fox owes you guys a royalty. He's doing that now.
Exactly. There you go.
And you got some great stories in the book about what makes a good guest, what makes a bad guest. Fortunately for Jay and for Johnny, there weren't too many of those, but occasionally one would pop up. I guess when they just didn't have any good stories to tell, right?
Right. The great guests, or the comics like Marty Short or Billy Crystal, Chris Rock, who come prepared. They have stories, they have jokes, they have material. And they have a reason to be there other than to plug their project. A bad guest is someone who, to me, is either a politician who tries to deliver those 3 selected points from their talking points from their latest economic forum memo, or someone who just doesn't. They're not in the moment. Something happens on the stage and they're so nervous, or they're there. Yeah, that's great, but let me talk about Paul Blart too. You know what I mean? And that's not Kevin James. He's great as a comic. He knows what to do. I'm using that as an example. But, those are the bad guests out there, the ones who just don't understand that you need to be in the moment and listen and watch what's going on.
Yeah, or the ones that would try and tell a joke and they have no concept of how to tell a joke, and that's really bad.
Yeah, there's, again, in the end, it comes down to it. If you can't tell a joke, if you're not funny, don't try.
Don't try.
And, I write a lot of award shows, too, Doug, and that's, when you're writing for the host, it's easy. It's a Chris Rock has a voice and a Hugh Jackman has a voice. When you're trying to write comedy for a presenter who just can't deliver, it's just, look, Jennifer Lopez, you're a wonderful person. Just announce the category.
That's right.
Don't deliver the joke. Dance, sing. Don't try to tell a joke.
Well, this is one of those books that I didn't want it to end. I'm always fascinated with anything dealing with television, particularly comedy, and this is a book filled with great stories, but also, aspiring writers out there, comedy writers, you get some great tips on how to put the joke together, how to put a monologue together, and that's the title of the book, Monologue. We've been talking with Jon Macks. And John, I know it just came out, doing well. Do you want to direct people to a website or a Facebook page of yours?
The best thing to do is to go to penguin.com, to go to the publisher. That's the best thing. It's actually Blue Rider Press is the other one. Either one you go to, and they'll send you to the best link or the nearest bookstore if you happen to go that way. You don't want to go out there, but that's the single best way to do it. Great.
John, pleasure talking to you. I know you still are busy doing the award shows and different writing things, but a great job on a 22-year run on The Tonight Show. Quite a legacy you left. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or Doug Miles.